What's going on, guys? I'm back with another Rocky episode, and today we're going to be talking about what seems to be everyone's favorite Rocky film of the franchise, Rocky IV. So as I've been doing in my last few reviews, I'm going to start off by nerding out on some of the behind-the-scene antics that took place. So again, if you don't want to hear it, skip to this timestamp. I'll start off with the cliffhanger I created in my last review, and that's what happened to Stallone in the making of the film. Stallone wanted to make the box sequences as real as possible, where Stallone and Lundgren actually go at it through the first segment of their fight, as well as Weathers and Lundgren as well. But as far as Stallone goes, as I've mentioned, he's always wanted the antagonist to hit him as hard as possible, so Lundgren obliged and put him in the hospital. He hit him so hard in the chest that his heart swelled up to his breastplate and was forced to go to the hospital, and he was kept in the ICU for 8 days. So I read anyways. Now, when it comes to Carl Weathers and Lundgren, Dolph was going so hard that Weathers, a familiar face in the franchise, threatened to walk off set because he was going too hard, throwing him to the turnbuckle, hitting him too hard, and all the rest of it. The thing is with Dolph Lundgren, he really wasn't a renowned actor at the time. I believe he had just one picture completed before this film, so he was still really green. He comes from a Kyokushin karate background, so he was a certified bad man, so he didn't really know how to exactly go easy on people. With that aside, another cool piece of information that carried over from the last film was Stallone's diet and training regimen. From what I read, his intake was nothing but straight tuna out of the can and black coffee. That's it. Maybe with just a touch of steroids as well, but that's neither here nor there, right? One of the other Easter eggs I found out about this movie was that Bridget Nielsen was Stallone's fiancée at the time, so that's how she got casted as Ivan Drago's wife. And the last nugget of information that I found, which I found really cool, especially from an inexperienced actor, was that Lundgren himself came up with the idea that his character should speak very minimally. Alright, with that nerd sesh out of the way, let's dive into the story of Rocky IV. Rocky IV, at its core, is another compelling revenge story that embodies the triumph of overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds, which is why it resonates with so many viewers. While it doesn't necessarily break down any barriers, maintaining a straightforward concept, it still possesses all the essential elements to create a solid film. Given the success of the previous 3 films, there was no need to reinvent the wheel here. Stallone wisely combined the strengths of Rocky III and elements from the first 2 films, crafting a stylized addition to the anthology series. Notably, it introduces new locations as the first 3 films were set in Philadelphia. This may disappoint some fans who believe the foundation of Rocky franchise was built on this premise, but it's commendable that the series strives to improve and doesn't really solely rely on the past success. For that, I give it credit. Like I've said in basically all of my reviews, I've been the biggest Rocky fan since basically conception. I was born into it. I can confidently say that Rocky IV is often regarded as many people's favorite installment. It's no wonder, as it's undoubtedly the most enjoyable and action-packed film of the franchise. This is a pure 80s blast of fun, devoid of any unnecessary fat as well. While it may be a bit over the top, portraying Rocky as a modern-day Iron Man, if you will, who single-handedly saves the Cold War between the USA and Russia, I appreciate the film's attempt to delve into a more complex theme. While this film is loads of fun, it still hits a lot of good dramatic and emotional beats, especially with its message about change. It goes beyond the surface-level message of embracing change and explores the darker sides of politics, showing how it can poison our minds. Despite the political undertones, Rocky IV manages to strike a balance between entertainment and thought-provoking themes. It's a film that conveys positive message while maintaining its own unique personality, and this is precisely what films should strive for. This American-made film caters to its audience, but it also provides a fair representation of Russia. It highlights our stereotypical perception of them and emphasizes their desire for respect, as they are just like us. Additionally, it showcases their passion for the support of their athletes. Lastly, Rocky IV moves at a very rapid pace with minimal downtime, making it a fast-paced and engaging watch. There was a director's cut that came out a few years ago, which cleans up some questions that you may have had, but if you watch the theatrical version, you can certainly tell that things were cut out. When it comes to our characters, as always, they're all fantastic. Starting with Sly. He basically has this character down to a science at this point, where he seems to always find a way to give Rocky more layers and improve the approach they take while writing his character. To put it simply, Rocky in this film is undoubtedly smarter than he was in Rocky II, but he has taken a step back from Rocky III. He embodies a cool and composed middle ground between the 2 styles of characters, while still maintaining his charm and charisma. Apollo, on the other hand, remains that flamboyant yet likable character. In this film, it's not so much like Paulie living in Rocky's shadow, but Apollo wants to feel like he's still got it. He misses that fame that he once had, while he witnesses the fanfare that Rocky still has. Their bond is widely recognized, even though it's still relatively new to the franchise. However, they remain one of the best elements of the entire Rocky franchise. At this point, we all know Apollo's fate, but coming from a first-time viewing perspective, I thought they did a fantastic job subtly foreshadowing his demise through the first act of the film. They achieved this through clever dialogue and Apollo's actions. One of the new additions to the film is Duke, played by Tony Burton, who you may know from The Shining. In my opinion, he's an underrated character throughout the entire Rocky franchise. Naturally, he often remains in the background, but he plays a crucial role in Rocky's later success. Duke now fills Apollo's shoes, just as Apollo filled Mickey's shoes without overshadowing him. I thought they did another excellent job filling Burton into the Weathers role. Duke serves as a grounding aspect to Rocky's character, passing on his older, wiser knowledge. While it's not explicitly stated, you can sense that Duke is a great role model for Rocky. He's an exceptional trainer and the best, and I mean best hype man any fighter could ask for. As for our antagonist, Dolph Lundgren's portrayal as Ivan Drago is arguably the most formidable of Rocky's opponents. He's not just any opponent, he is the most deadly out of all of them. The first 3 Rocky films had already used this boastful, loud style of antagonist, so I appreciate how they switched things up and made him a silent killer. This makes him even scarier, especially considering his incredible skill set. Like Clubber Lang, his character isn't fully fleshed out, but he certainly has more depth to him. In fact, I would argue that he's the most expanded upon antagonist since Creed, and in some respects, maybe more so than Apollo. The way they write his character is almost WWE-esque, portraying him as a dangerous mountain of a man who doesn't speak for himself, but has others speak for him. The way his entourage speaks for him is so cold and so chilling. As for the script, I think it's one of the better ones. It certainly doesn't hold a candle to the first 2 installments, but I definitely found this to be a bit of an upgrade compared to the 3rd installment. Not that the 3rd was bad by any stretch. It's my favorite movie. However, there are so many iconic and memorable moments throughout the runtime, including some great, and I mean great pieces of dialogue between Rocky and Apollo, Rocky and Adrian, and even Rocky and his son. You could argue that in any of these scenes are the best of the film. I didn't really think the tones were as balanced as well as the 3rd film, but this one was certainly balanced nonetheless. The first act or so was pretty lighthearted and fun, but after Apollo's fate, it turns to being very serious and even dark in some moments. To balance it all out, we had Paulie, who's arguably at his funniest in this film. He's always there to change the mood in either direction, while you still get your Rocky-isms from Rocky. When it comes to the training sequences, as you've noticed, I often say you could argue, because there are so many opinions out there. However, this time around, I believe it's fair to say the training sequences are the best of the entire Rocky franchise, along with the score and the soundtrack, which I'll discuss further in a minute. After that halfway point or so, the film transitions into a massive montage scene. It alternates between Rocky mourning Apollo and the actual training montages of Rocky, then back and forth between Rocky and Drago. They demonstrated this style in basically all of the films, but not to this extent. These montages were incredibly gritty, yet incredibly fun. Rocky returns to his traditional, old-school grindhouse style of training, chopping wood, chopping down trees, and running up snowy mountains. On the other hand, Drago had access to all the latest technology and equipment, along with steroids. When it comes to the boxing, outside of Rocky V's final fight, I believe this is probably the best fight of the franchise. I really appreciate Rocky 3 because of the new game plan and the adjustments Rocky made on the fly. However, this fight felt extremely real because, realistically, it was mostly real. They obviously weren't going at it to kill each other, but they were letting each other have it. And you could really tell they were going at it because of the minimal amount of post-production sound they added. Most of the noises you hear are actually the sounds of them hitting each other. In Rocky 1, you get the scene where Rocky gets dropped in round 14 and Apollo starts to celebrate, but Rocky gets back up. In Rocky 2, there's the final 10-second scene where they both fall. In Rocky 3, you see him taking a proper beating in round 2. But this fight, above all, really shows Rocky's heart and determination. He's not only fighting a giant, but he's also fighting a non-sanctioned bout. When you call it a spade, Drago is essentially cheating throughout a lot of the fight by taking steroids, throwing him around, physically lifting him up, and hitting him after the bell. This fight evokes a cluster of emotions in me, even after seeing it countless times. The anticipation and emotions I felt during my first viewing are still palpable, as if I'm still on the edge of my seat, unsure of what's to come. While I'm on the topic of emotions, Rocky's final speech at the end of the fight brings all the feels Rocky 2 did, and what's even more fascinating about that, supposedly, this was all improvised on the spot. Lastly, the film's soundtrack and score is simply amazing. As I mentioned earlier, the training and boxing scenes are a testament to the film's brilliance. While some may argue that it feels like a music video due to the montages, the music is undeniably exceptional. You got songs like Burning Hot, I Live in America, No Easy Way Out, which is my personal favorite, and Hearts on Fire, and they're all must-hears. It's a shame that Bill Conti didn't compose the music this time around, as he's such a legend and a legendary talent. However, Vince DiCola's ability to create such a diverse and captivating scores and soundtracks is truly remarkable. Now, unlike the first 3 films, I certainly have more drawbacks. For starters, unfortunately, and admittedly, this is where the franchise starts to decline in quality. It is a bit silly if we're being honest. Do I care? Not really, but as a critic, it certainly needs to be mentioned. Although different in some aspects, it almost feels like a remake of Rocky 3. Rocky loses another close loved one and has to get revenge, along with the tone shifts that occur. It sometimes feels a bit lazy, and even Sly said himself that he regrets killing off Creed. But to be fair, it worked out for the better because of the spin-off trilogy that we got in Creed. Now, that's not to say his death wasn't moving. I was shook when I was a kid, like when he twitched. That bugged me out. But I didn't feel as emotionally attached as I did to Mickey. As mentioned, I still tear up to this day when Mickey hits the "it hurts" blah. My next issue is with the pacing. I'm all for fast-paced films because sometimes slower-paced or 3+ hour long films can be tough for me to get through. This film just flies by. Because of the amount of cuts and fast pace, it runs into quite a few plot holes. For example, who watched Rocky's son when Adrian left? The robot? Give me a break. There's also no build-up for Rocky and Drago. Apollo dies, and the next frame is Rocky and Drago at the press conference. You could tell there was a big cut made there. Another example is, how does Drago go from being an amateur to killing the former, arguably best heavyweight of all time regardless of how old Apollo is? There's no background on who he was fighting or how good he actually was. I mean, I guess we get that answer after the fight though, so I guess it makes sense. All I'm going to say is, thank God for the director's cut that came out because it certainly patches up some of these holes and expands on Apollo's motivations, which feel rather thin in the theatrical cut. My next issue comes from the many montages. This personally doesn't bother me much, but it does feel somewhat lazy because it rushes by, leaving certain events and characters underdeveloped. And my last minor issue is that Adrian, once again, is underutilized in this film, even more so than Rocky 3. Again, in the director's cut, she has more to do, but in the theatrical version, she doesn't really do a whole lot. Apart from the stair scene and her brief visit to Russia to talk to Rocky for 25 seconds, she essentially does nothing. While her role as the driving force behind Rocky's journey is still effectively portrayed, I personally would have liked to see her more. Overall, Rocky IV is still a good film, and even a very good film. Critically, I do think it's the weakest of the first 4 films, but it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, mainly because it's a lot of people's favorite. Rocky IV gets a very solid 6 out of 10 from me. Let me know what you think about Rocky IV in the comments, and stay tuned for Rocky V. See you guys in the next one.